Welcome to Championship Culture. Got a fantastic guest with us tonight. Jon DeMarco is a football, basketball consultant. All right, so Jon was a football offensive coordinator for 7 years. He was a head basketball coach for 5 years, and now and also an assistant principal during all that. And now he's doing consulting work. And when we get to question number 5, I'm going to let him go all in on explaining how the consulting and his Get Better basketball program is doing. But Jon, super excited to have you on here, man. We've been trying to coordinate this thing for a few weeks, and I'm excited to get you here, buddy.
Well, I'm excited to be on here, and anytime I have an opportunity to talk with a fellow coach and talk shop, I'm always looking forward to it.
Well, this is mainly a football channel, but I've had a couple basketball guys come on and do the podcast, and I'll tell you what, they're probably two of the best podcasts we had were the two basketball guys that came on. They just had it wired in, with how they built and taught the culture. So been very basketball guys have been very good on this deal. So I appreciate you being here. So let's get it started. Question number 1: can you give a 1-minute elevator introduction of yourself?
Well, Joe, right now, I mean, I give a quick introduction to say I'm a coach who's working to help players and coaches get better every day, and that's really what I'm doing currently. I coached football right out of college. I actually played college football and coached football for probably about 10, 12 years in total, OC for 7 years. And I coached basketball all the way up until 2017 when I had my first child was born, my son. And now I have 3 children, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So something had to give. And I stepped away from head coaching, and now I'm doing the consulting and the player development side of it, which I love because I can create my own schedule. And also, fortunate to be working in administration in schools as an assistant principal. So love what I do, and excited to talk more about it.
Awesome, man. And I know they can't tell from your accent, but you're up in the and I was gonna try to use a Boston accent, but from the South, I would just destroy that. They wouldn't know what I was talking about. But you're in the Boston area. They can tell from your accent. All right. Question number 2. What is your definition, or how do you define culture in your program?
For me, culture has always been the values, the attitude, the goals, the beliefs of any team. Our core values have always driven what I've done. They've been slightly different, depending on the sport, football or basketball, just based on the team that I'm coaching. But, things like accountability, appreciation, teamwork, competitiveness, relentless. Those are our last values. I think that's a big part, an important part of your culture. And, one of the things I think of John Gordon a lot when I think about culture, and I follow a lot of what he says and what he talks about. And I feel like he really gets it. It's not one thing, culture. And this is something John Gordon talks a lot about. It's everything. It's everything in your program. They have to drive everything that what you do. Your culture drives your expectations and your beliefs. That then drives the behaviors and the habits that you have, and the habits really create the future of the program. So that all starts with the culture in the program. And that's John Gordon right there, and that's something that I've always taken along with me. And another piece is really when I'm thinking about culture, it's not static, it's dynamic, it's always changing. And there's things that you can add that can be really good for your culture, but all it takes is that one thing that can really impact it negatively as well. And you have to constantly be taking the temperature and really thinking about those values and those beliefs and the things that are really important to your program.
I want to go off script for a second because
Sure.
we were talking before we started recording. You're an assistant principal. I'm finishing up my master's in administration. What do you think impacts a school culture? When feel like it's so much easier when you're dealing with your sports team because they want to be there and they want to listen, they want to make you happy. But in a school situation, sometimes none of those are true. So do you have any insight school wise?
Yeah, I do think the core values are still a really big part of the culture, and really, living through those values every day. But I think with the school, for me, relationships, and I think it's also um, coaching as well. It's important, obviously, the relationships you have and the communication piece. I think a lot of times what I've seen in schools when things go sour, it's when there's the lack of communication, a lack of clarity between groups. In my position, especially, I'm working with the team chair in special education and families and the guidance counselors and the social worker and the principal. And so if my communication's not on point and I leave people out of the loop, then it can really impact what happens. And then that then has an impact on the culture in the building and how people are feeling and not feeling connected. And that impacts your relationship to them. So I think communication's important in sports as well, but in schools, it's extremely important.
That was brilliant, man. I don't know if it was John Gordon or Brian Kane talks about when there's a lack of communication, negative will fill the void. And
Yep.
that, I mean, you just nailed it. That's exactly what they talk about. I'm not sure which one of them says that, but that's communication is, it automatically turns negative when you're not communicating enough.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So going back to your basketball head coaching days, what were the three, or I guess probably in your consulting business too, what are the three best things you do to build culture in your program?
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to it, but I'll say it again. It's the core values, I think, really drive everything that you do. Something that we did when I was a head basketball coach was we dedicated a day of the week to each of our values. So we had Appreciation Friday, and the players would go to their teachers and write them a little note how much they appreciate them. The players would write, to each other, or they might at the end of practice say how much they appreciate about another teammate or to their family. So we did it a lot of different ways, but we lived that value. And that was Fridays. We had Accountability Thursday. Communication was a big part of that Thursday. Competitive Wednesday, a Competition Wednesday. I stole that from Pete Carroll with the Seattle Seahawks. It's something he does in his practices. I'm sure he probably still does it. That was a few years back. Um, so just taking those values and really living them every way we could. We lived them in practice, in games. We talked about it, constantly. Really, it was on our Twitter feed. So I think the core values and really living through those is such an important part of the culture. I'll lump the next two things together as I'm thinking about it, but communication and relationships. I mentioned that in a school setting. You got to build positive relationships with the players, their families, but where that goes sour is obviously the communication piece, and that's important. And it's listening to people and listening to what they have to say, and also, being transparent with them about your process, about your program, and what you're trying to do with your program. And then, the last piece that really comes to mind for me um, is really I have two more in mind, so maybe I'll share the other one too. But I think, the weeding out the negativity. I feel like when you're trying to build a positive culture, and this is a John Gordon thing, he talks a lot about energy vampires. And, I've lived that as a coach in football and in basketball. And, it's understanding, the right players for your program, the right coaches for your program, and really helping them to understand what it means to be positive. And it's okay. There's going to be challenges and adversity, but how do you approach those challenges? And I think that's really a life skill. And a lot of players don't have that. There's adults that don't have that skill. So, for me, weeding out some of the negativity, though, there's definitely opportunities to complain. There's opportunities to talk negatively about each other, and, really taking every opportunity to also address those issues as they come up. I think that's a really important part. And I always tell new coaches, first time head coaches, they'll ask me, for advice about that. And that's one of the things when they're taking over a struggling program, and that negativity is going to be there, and you kind of have to address it head on and, do it in a positive way. But you do have to address it. And that's really, really, really important. So,
I'm so glad you said that, because I have like this pet peeve where I can't stand it when they, like on a Friday, if the flag goes down, and they want to start predicting, oh, that one's on us. And I can't, no, don't, never say it's on us. Let the referee decide who it's on. That's just a little thing, but it makes me crazy when we start predicting bad stuff about ourselves.
Such a great point.
Number 4, and you're in the perfect position to do this. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you first got started?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I got started coaching, I was really, really young. And I think I was really good at the relationship piece and working with players. As a young coach, you can be like a little bit more relatable sometimes. So I think I was good at that, but really kind of hashing out the values. And, as an assistant coach, you don't really have to think about that as much. The head coaches sort of run that program. But the core values and how to bring players into that process. I've talked to a couple of great coaches. Travis Hardenberger, who's a former high school coach and now a middle school coach, he has a unity council, and he got the idea from Tom Osborne, I think at Nebraska. And he's a basketball coach, and he took a great football coach's idea. I like how when stuff is transferable, it's great. But and he brings the kids into the process, and they create the rules and the values. And so I think as a younger coach, sometimes you tend to be a little bit more like my way or the highway. And there's a time for that. There's times where you have to set kind of strict limitations on things and, accountability for players. But I think how to build the players into that decision-making process. And one of the things we did in my last year as a basketball coach, we had a great team, a really solid run into the tournament, deep into the state tournament. We actually created a new value, and we dropped a core value, and they voted on that, and they came up with a couple of values, and we voted on that as a team. And they really lived. It actually ended up being relentless was the value that they chose, and we lived it. And I felt like that was like that year more than any value. We were relentless. Things didn't go our way, and we just kept plugging along, and we battled into the tournament, and then just made a run. So, I think making players part of the process is so important. And as a younger coach, sometimes, or a newer head coach, it's tougher to do that because you feel like you have to be the authority figure. You have to be the one to set the tone. And there's an art to kind of, building the players into that process. And there's some great coaches. Travis Hardenberger is one that I really enjoyed talking to recently. He'd probably be a cool one for you to talk to as well, Coach. So.
Well, give me his contact information when we're done, and I'll get him on here. But I'm 100% with you on that one. All right. Number 5 is finishing up your contact information. I know you're on Twitter. What's your handle on Twitter?
Yeah, so people can reach me at Coach_DeMarco, DEMARCO. That's my Twitter feed. Every week from that account, I do the Get Better Basketball chat, which is a weekly coaches chat. I know similar to the Hog football chat or the Texas high school football chat. I participated in those for a lot of years, and those are great coaches, and I really enjoyed and learned a lot from them in that process and appreciate what they do. So I have a weekly Twitter chat. I also send out a newsletter weekly for coaches. And then really my YouTube channel has kind of been my big thing this year, especially during the pandemic. I really tried to expand what I was doing, and I started to interview coaches and have similar conversations to what we're doing here, and always appreciate the opportunity to do this with coaches. And then that channel's Get Better Basketball. And then I also put out a lot of weekly videos for basketball specific, and hoping to really kind of transition over to the football side. The basketball side of it is really taken off, but as I mentioned, I was a college football player, and I love football through and through. And once the basketball gets stabilized and keeps growing, then maybe I can shift back over to the football side too.
I'm not sure that I knew you had the YouTube channel. So that's Get Better Basketball.
Yep.
I knew you had the Twitter chat, and that's Get Better Basketball Chat on Twitter.
Yeah. The hashtag is GBetBBChat, and it's the Get Better Basketball Chat. That's Wednesday nights at 8:00 Eastern time, and that's grown quite a bit. That's actually when I stopped coaching, decided to step away and focus on my school career and obviously our family, our young growing family, that was the first thing I did was really jump on and start that chat. And it kind of started there and it's grown. I'm actually really the only basketball based chat right now. I know there's a couple football ones, but for basketball, right now, the only one out there, which has been really nice. So
That's awesome. All right. And then the consulting work, tell us
yeah,
about that.
so recently really just started working with coaches. I did a couple of I did the coaches clinic, which was a big clinic for basketball coaches, and had a bunch of coaches reach out to me because I did a whole thing on my coaching portfolio and interviewing. And so I've started working individually with coaches, and that's kind of a next step for me that was kind of unexpected, to be honest. I thought it would be more player development and the coaching chat and maybe some YouTube with some of the videos, but that kind of has taken off. So I've actually mentored a couple of coaches and they've sent me their portfolios. And I'm doing a mock interview with a coach coming up over the break, which is really cool because I've been on a lot of interview committees and I've interviewed for a lot of jobs. As you know, I was in my 20s when I became a head coach, and I had gone through a lot of interviews in that process because everyone wants to hire a current coach. It's tough to get hired as an assistant coach. So a lot of interviews. So that's been kind of cool working with coaches. And then obviously with players, the consultancy is really the player development. And, I do that with football and basketball players.
I think the interview and stuff, ideally you've been on both sides of that. So that you'd be the ideal person to help. I might need to look you up on that one. That's inside information right there. So that's
Yeah, it's been, and you
fantastic.
know what, it's been cool because I have had that opportunity to be on both sides of it. And, I can give some feedback to the coaches in terms of what they need to do. And also I've been in their shoes and I know how hard it is, and you can get pretty nervous in that spot too.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. All right. And then I gotta apologize to you because I was giving you a demotion. I was thinking your thing said EDS and it says EDD. So you're Dr. DeMarco. So
That is, yes, that is correct. Yes, that is correct. That was
I didn't
right.
mean to demote you there, man. I just was reading it wrong. So I was asking
No,
those questions before we started filming, and you kept giving me a different answer. I was like, what? I didn't quite
I
follow it, but now I know it's because I was giving you a demotion.
I
So
thought you had said EDD actually, so I actually misheard you anyway. So, but yeah, actually that was a cool process too, and we talked a little bit about that before.
yeah, definitely. A wide a wide array of different ways to link up with you, whether we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, or through the consulting. And we got your YouTube contact information, so I'm sure people are going to be wanting to get up with you that way. And I'm going to link your YouTube because this thing comes out on YouTube and as a podcast. So I'll link your YouTube stuff and also your Twitter stuff. And Dr. DeMarco, I sure do appreciate you being on here, man. You did a great
Yeah,
job.
Joe, thank you so much. It's really good. This is a lot of fun, and anytime I have a chance to talk with a fellow coach and talk about culture and what that means, I hope there was some takeaways for the coaches that watch us.
Oh yeah, I've told a few already, so I know you're gonna have a lot of guys stealing and borrowing and probably bugging you on Twitter to ask you more questions. Thank
Sounds
you very
good.
much.